we overlook what we really need to see because we just go to these quick fixes and these feel good situations instead of doing the deep inner work to say, but why am I stuck in these cycles? What am I gaining from this cycle? As an entrepreneur, we often get stuck in the same repetitive cycles from overthinking, over delivering, under delivering, procrastinating, so many different things that become our habits, become our identity, and we get stuck in those cycles. So why is that? Well, everywhere you look, you see something that says that they'll solve your problem. This will help you get this. This will help you get over your imposter syndrome and your self-sabotaging habits. And oftentimes when you get into that, what you're finding is it's this high level of like motivation and telling you that you're good enough, which we all innately know, but we don't believe. And so we miss the purpose. We overlook what we really need to see because we just go to these quick fixes and these feel good situations instead of doing the deep inner work to say, but why am I stuck in these cycles? What am I gaining from this cycle? And how is this cycle continuing to serve me? And yes, you are getting something in return. And that's why I'd like to break down my TRM, my trigger response method, and there are 5 steps for you to actually break these cycles so you don't have to continue to repeat them. Because when we have awareness, when we bring awareness about why we're doing things and also why we're not doing things, then we can start to dissolve the borders, the edges, the harshness around them, and we can start to actually make those changes. So there's 5 steps, and it's called the trigger response method. So the first one, of course, is the trigger. It's the awareness around what is triggering you to begin with. So if you really want to make some changes in your business, if you really want to stop repeating the same freaking cycles over and over and over, you have to be willing to step into this. So what is your trigger? What are you reacting to? Is it showing up on social media? Is it sending out a really important email to maybe get some investments into your business or maybe find a different opportunity? Or maybe it's for you to start reaching out to get on stage, right? There's a trigger that is sending you into a same repetitive cycle. So ask yourself, what is that trigger for you? What is that trigger right now in your business that you know is holding you back, right? Step 1, what's the trigger? Step 2, that's when we begin to understand what that trigger is, where it came from. So we start to go deeper into the root. Where did this come from? It likely is almost always originated in childhood, where it developed a belief that you now adopt as your own, as truth for you. So we start to explore that from all the different edges. And this isn't about blame. We're not blaming somebody else for a situation that we're in. It's about understanding, right? That's why step 2 is about understand. So we begin to understand where it came from, what it means, what it actually brings up in us. What are the feelings it brings up in us? Does it bring up inadequacy? Does it bring up that we're not worthy? Does it bring up that we don't feel like we're smart enough? What is it that's actually coming up for us? What are the real thoughts and emotions attached to that trigger? What are the real thoughts and emotions attached to that external event? You really start to dissect it and look at it from a lot of different ways so you can begin to move through it. And one thing that I really want to mention is that we're not judging it. So we're not saying, oh my gosh, there it is again, or oh my gosh, I've done years of therapy and I still haven't moved through this, or oh my gosh, why am I like this? It's not even that big of a deal. We're not doing that. We're looking at it from a really open place and we're not judging it. We're just allowing it to be present. Because if you don't do this work and if you don't stop criticizing yourself over and over and over, then you're going to keep repeating those cycles. And criticism hasn't gotten to where you want to go. So why don't we just let it go for a little bit, right? So just trust me. So we're not judging it, right? So we find the trigger and we start to build awareness and understanding around it. Where did it come from? And we just allow it to be. Now I move into the third step, and the third step is what most people don't like to hear, and that's your payoff. This is what you're really getting in return from having this cycle on repeat. And so as humans, our brains work this way where we always gravitate towards safety. We want to remain safe. And safety oftentimes means familiar. And so right now you're stuck in this space of familiarity, of just doing the same cycle over and over and over, even if it is detrimental. right? So that's where safety can get a little bit confusing because you're like, I'm not really safe right now because by doing this, I'm risking my house because I'm not making a profit or all these other things. But safety often is familiar. And we want to stay in that familiar place. So if self-sabotaging and not putting yourself out there and not being visible is familiar, that's where you will stay until you choose to take another path. So when we look at our payoff, there's always a perceived payoff because you wouldn't keep doing it if you didn't get something in return. And that's something that you have to accept. And so you have to, again, we're not judging, we're accepting that. I am doing this to get something in return. So we get into this payoff and we start to really understand it about what it is you are craving within this. Is it giving you a feeling of validation? Is it allowing you to be safe, right? So if it's so you don't show up and create the videos and put yourself out there on YouTube or social media, is that a level of safety to protect you from criticism? Is it something that if you prove to yourself that you can do it, so if you are if you are not staying consistent, if you are the type of person who just pulls back, gets a little momentum and pulls back. So we have to ask ourselves, what is it protecting you from? If you're the type of person who just puts yourself out there and you gain a lot of momentum and then you pull back, then you might say, why do I keep doing that? I have a lot of success coming my way, but I'm not gaining anything by pulling back, but you are gaining something. You're gaining your ability to stay stuck in the beliefs that you have about yourself. This was really common for me. I would get a lot of momentum in my business. I'd get a lot of speaking events. I would get a lot of opportunities and things were going really well. People were really attracted to me. They really wanted my offers. And then what would I do? I would pivot. I would change. I would make not an excuse. I would create a reason to not keep going down that path. And I would switch things up, which then derailed my progression, my momentum. And why did I do that? I was becoming really successful in what I was doing and in the way I was doing it. But until I really addressed my belief about myself that I wasn't capable and I couldn't have something successful, until I really identified that and I could see it playing out really clearly, I just kept repeating that pattern. Because what my safety was, what my payoff was, is the familiarity of not being successful. And so until you bring that into your awareness, it will continue to creep up and seep up in so many different areas. So you have to be willing to address it. Right? So the payoff is a really big one. So we have to really understand that for yourself. And the fourth one is where we get to where we just accept it. Right? We just see it. We tell ourselves the truth about it. Like, this is present. I can allow this to be here, but I don't have to keep making these decisions. Right? It doesn't have to be true for me. I can see it without judgment. I can see what comes up for me, and I can make a commitment to myself to not do this over and over and over. Right? And then the fifth one is when we actually choose a different response. So now our reaction is now different from all the things that we've learned about ourselves. So when we're getting into business, unless you address these 5 steps and you start to apply them, you're going to keep repeating. That's likely why you've done all these different things about self-sabotage, why you've tried to bust through your imposter syndrome and all these other buzzwords that are out there, which are all true. But until you actually address this to its very root and core, it's all surface level and you're going to stay surface level. And you're going to get that momentum and you're going to pull yourself back for whatever it is that you're gaining. So you have to be willing to stop and ask yourself, how can I apply this to my business? What does this look like? And where can I go if I shatter those ceilings I set for myself? What would that look like for you? And I would love to hear what stands out for you most. What do you find the most helpful when you think about those 5 steps of the TRM? Also, don't forget to download a free resource where you can go through this, a journal that's going to walk you through each of these steps even more in depth and where you can apply it to certain places in your business. And of course, it works in your personal life too.